The notification ping from my phone cut through the silence of our kitchen like a blade through butter. I was standing at the counter, stirring my third cup of coffee of the evening, when Tessa's message lit up the screen. Emergency work meeting downtown. Have to stay overnight at the Hyatt. Love you. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I stared at those words for a long moment, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. My wife of 15 years, Tessa Lang, attorney extraordinaire and master of convenient emergencies, had just handed me the most predictable lie in the cheating spouse playbook. The thing about being a mechanical engineer is that you develop an eye for patterns. When something doesn't fit, when the tolerances are off, when the math doesn't add up. You notice. And Tessa's emergency meetings had been happening with suspicious frequency lately. I scrolled through our text history. 3 emergency meetings in the past month, all requiring overnight stays, all at the same hotel. My fingers moved across the screen as I typed my response. Say hi to your ex, David, in room 418. The silence that followed was deafening. No immediate response, no angry phone call, nothing. Just the ticking of our kitchen clock and the sound of my own breathing. You see, I'd done my homework. David Carr, real estate developer and Tessa's college boyfriend, had been making frequent appearances in her life lately. Just business, she'd said when I asked about the lunch meetings. He's helping the firm with some property deals. But business doesn't require hotel rooms, and it certainly doesn't require the kind of secrecy I'd been witnessing. 3 weeks ago, I'd noticed the credit card statement. 2 charges at the Hyatt downtown on the same night. One for the room, under Tessa's name, another for room service. Enough food for 2 people. When I'd asked about it, she'd claimed she was stress eating and ordered extra food she didn't finish. 2 weeks ago, I'd seen David's name flash on her phone screen with a text that read, "Can't wait for tonight." When I'd mentioned it, she'd said it was about a client dinner. 1 week ago, I'd driven past the Hyatt during one of her late work sessions and seen David's silver Mercedes in the parking garage. The pieces of the puzzle had been scattered across our marriage for months, and I'd finally put them together. My wife was having an affair with her ex-boyfriend, and they'd been using the same hotel room, 418, for their encounters. My phone buzzed. A call from Tessa. "Neil." Her voice was breathless, panicked. "What did you mean by that text?" "Exactly what I said, sweetheart. Give David my regards. I hear room 418 has a nice view of the city." The line went quiet, except for the sound of her breathing. In the background, I could hear traffic, car doors slamming, the bustle of downtown Houston. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. "Sure you don't. Just like you didn't know what I was talking about when I asked about the room service charges, or the late-night texts, or why your emergency meetings always seem to coincide with David's availability." Another long pause. Then, "Neil, I can explain everything." "I'm sure you can, and you always were good with words, Tess. It's what makes you such a great lawyer. But here's the thing about evidence. It speaks louder than explanations." I could hear her moving, footsteps echoing in what sounded like a parking garage. "I'm coming home. We need to talk." "Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. Unlike some people, I actually sleep in my own bed." I hung up and set the phone on the counter. My hands were surprisingly steady as I poured myself another cup of coffee. 15 years of marriage, and it had come down to this. A text message and a hotel room number. The front door slammed open 23 minutes later. I'd been timing it, curious to see how fast she could drive from downtown to our suburb in Katy. Apparently the answer was fast enough to break several traffic laws. Tessa burst into the kitchen, her usually perfect blonde hair disheveled, her makeup smeared. She was still wearing her court clothes, a navy blue suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "How did you know?" she demanded, her chest heaving from what I assumed was a combination of panic and the sprint from her car to our front door. I took a slow sip of my coffee, studying her face. Even in her current state of distress, Tessa was beautiful. It was one of the things that had attracted me to her all those years ago. That and her sharp mind, her ambition, her ability to command a room with nothing but her presence. Too bad she'd decided to command David Carr's hotel room instead of working on our marriage. "Private investigator," I lied smoothly. "Hired him 3 weeks ago. Amazing what a professional can find out when they put their mind to it." Her face went white. "You hired someone to follow me." "I hired someone to find out why my wife had suddenly developed an allergy to honesty. Turns out the answer was simple. You've been screwing your ex-boyfriend in a hotel room downtown while telling me you were working late?" Tessa sank into one of our kitchen chairs, her head in her hands. Neil, I never meant for this to happen. Really? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks pretty intentional. Hotel reservations don't make themselves, Tess. Neither do lies about emergency meetings. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. It just happened. David and I started working together on the Morrison property deal, and we spent a lot of time together, and old feelings came back. And you decided to act on them instead of talking to your husband about whatever problems we were having in our marriage. We weren't having problems, she protested. Everything was fine between us. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Everything was fine? Tess, we haven't had a real conversation in months. We haven't been intimate in even longer. You work late every night, you're always on your phone, and when I try to talk to you about anything meaningful, you brush me off with some excuse about being tired or stressed. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time we went out together? Just the two of us. No work talk, no distractions. When was the last time you asked me about my job or my day or anything that didn't involve you needing something from me? She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. We both knew the answer. I thought so, I said. So don't sit there and tell me everything was fine. Everything was convenient for you. You had a stable home life with me and excitement with David. Best of both worlds, right? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Tess? Help me understand how a woman who stood in front of our friends and family and promised to love, honor, and cherish me decides to start meeting her ex-boyfriend in hotel rooms. She was crying harder now, mascara running down her cheeks in black streaks. I don't know. I don't know how it happened. I just felt alive again. With David, I felt like the person I used to be before marriage and mortgages and all the responsibility. So this is my fault? Our marriage made you feel dead inside, so you had to go find yourself in David Carr's bed? That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her makeup even more. I'm saying I made a mistake. A terrible, awful mistake, and I want to fix it. I set my coffee cup down and looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had shared my bed for 15 years, who had promised to be my partner through everything life threw at us, who had just spent the evening in another man's arms while lying to my face about it. The mistake wasn't sleeping with David, Tess. The mistake was thinking you could lie to me about it indefinitely. The mistake was thinking I was too stupid or too trusting to figure it out. I never thought you were stupid. No? Then what did you think? That I'd just accept your increasingly elaborate excuses? That I wouldn't notice the changes in your behavior, the secrecy, the way you've been treating me like a roommate instead of a husband? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice calm and steady despite the rage burning in my chest. You're going to pack a bag and find somewhere else to stay tonight. Tomorrow you're going to call a lawyer, not someone from your firm, but an independent attorney who can represent you in our divorce proceedings. Divorce? Her voice was barely a whisper. Did you think we were going to work through this? Did you think I was going to forgive and forget while you continued your relationship with David? I'll end it with him. I'll never see him again. Neil, please, we can fix this. I shook my head. No, we can't. Because this isn't just about the affair, Tess. This is about trust and respect and the fundamental honesty that a marriage requires to survive. You've destroyed all of that. But I love you. No, you don't. You love the security I provide, the comfortable life we've built, the respectability of being married. But you don't love me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have been able to do this. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the kitchen floor. You're being unreasonable. People make mistakes, Neil. People have affairs and work through them. It doesn't have to end our marriage. It already has ended our marriage. The marriage ended the first time you met David in that hotel room. I'm just making it official. And what about our friends? What about our life together? What about everything we've built? I smiled, but it felt cold on my face. What about it? You should have thought about all of that before you decided to rebuild your relationship with your ex-boyfriend. Tessa stared at me for a long moment, as if seeing me clearly for the first time in years. I don't know who you are right now. I'm the same person I've always been, Tess. The difference is that now I know who you are. She turned and walked out of the kitchen. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, the sound of drawers opening and closing, the rustle of clothes being packed. 20 minutes later, she came back downstairs with a suitcase and her laptop bag. This isn't over, she said from the doorway. Yes, it is. She left without another word, and I was alone in the house we'd shared for 8 years. I finished my coffee and went to bed, sleeping better than I had in months. I woke up the next morning with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The fog of confusion and self-doubt that had been clouding my thoughts for months was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp focus that reminded me of my military days. After 20 years in the Army Corps of Engineers before transitioning to civilian life, I'd learned a few things about strategy and patience. I'd also learned that the best offense is often a well-planned defense, and right now, I needed to defend myself against whatever Tessa and her high-powered attorney friends might throw at me. My first call was to Ray Morrison, my best friend since we'd served together in Afghanistan. Ray had left the military around the same time I did, but he'd gone into law enforcement instead of engineering. He'd recently retired from the Houston Police Department after 25 years on the force. "Neil," Ray's gravelly voice answered on the second ring. "Little early for a social call, isn't it?" "I need a favor, Ray, and some advice." "What kind of trouble are you in?" "The kind that involves divorce lawyers and cheating wives." There was a pause. "Tessa? Tessa? Son of a bitch. I'm sorry, man. You want to talk about it over coffee? I was about to head out anyway." We met at a diner near Ray's house in Humble, a place that served coffee strong enough to wake the dead and breakfast big enough to feed a small army. Ray was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with his back to the wall, old habits from his cop days. Ray Morrison looked exactly like what Central Casting would order for a retired police detective. Graying hair, weathered face, eyes that had seen too much of the world's ugliness, and a gut that spoke to too many years of fast food and stress eating. But his mind was still sharp as a razor, and his loyalty was absolute. "So," he said after I'd ordered coffee and eggs, "tell me about it." I laid out everything. The suspicious behavior, the credit card charges, the hotel room, the confrontation the night before. Ray listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or making notes on a napkin. "You said you told her you hired a private investigator," he said when I finished, "but you didn't actually hire one." "No, I figured it out on my own." "Smart move lying about it. Keeps them guessing about how much you really know. But here's the thing, Neil. If this goes to divorce court, you're going to need more than credit card statements and suspicions." "What do you mean?" "I mean, Texas is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery can still affect property division and spousal support. If you can prove she was cheating, it strengthens your position significantly." Ray pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. "I know a guy, private investigator, former cop, discreet and thorough. He can get you the kind of evidence that will hold up in court." "Is that necessary? I mean, I caught her red-handed last night." "You caught her in a lie, and you made an educated guess about what she was doing. That's not the same as having photographic evidence or recorded admissions. Trust me, her attorney is going to claim it was all innocent, that you misunderstood the situation." The waitress brought our food, and we ate in silence for a few minutes while I considered Ray's advice. Part of me wanted to just get the divorce over with as quickly and quietly as possible. But another part of me, the part that had been humiliated and betrayed, wanted to make sure Tessa faced consequences for her actions. "There's something else," Ray said, cutting into his pancakes. "You need to be careful about your own behavior from here on out. Don't do anything that could be construed as harassment or stalking. Don't follow her. Don't show up at her work. Don't contact David Carr directly." "Why would I contact David?" "I know, because you're angry, and angry people do stupid things. I've seen it 100 times. Betrayed spouse decides to confront the other man, ends up getting arrested for assault or making threats." Ray was right, of course. I was angry. Angrier than I'd been in years. But I was also smart enough to know that acting on that anger would only hurt my position. So what do? You document everything. You keep records of all communication with Tessa. You protect your assets. Make sure she can't clean out your joint accounts or run up debt on your credit cards. And you let the private investigator do his job, while you focus on getting yourself a good divorce attorney. "Any recommendations on the attorney front?" Ray grinned. "As a matter of fact, yes. Remember Sandra Walsh from the old neighborhood? She went to law school, specializes in family law now, and tough as nails, and doesn't take prisoners." I remembered Sandra. She'd been a few years behind us in school, but she'd had a reputation for being incredibly smart and absolutely fearless. If I was going to war with Tessa and her legal connections, I needed someone who wouldn't be intimidated. "I'll give her a call." "Good. And Neil, I'm sorry this is happening to you. Tessa always seemed like one of the good ones." "Yeah, well, apparently I was wrong about that." We finished breakfast and parted ways in the parking lot. Ray promised to text me the private investigator's contact information, and I promised to call Sandra Walsh before the end of the day. Driving home, I felt a strange sense of purpose. For months, I'd been drifting through my marriage in a state of vague dissatisfaction, sensing that something was wrong, but unable to put my finger on what it was. Now I knew exactly what was wrong, and more importantly, I knew what I needed to do about it. My phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. "Staying at Leah's house. We need to talk when you're ready to be reasonable." I didn't respond. There would be plenty of time for talking once I had my legal ducks in a row. The house felt different when I got home, bigger somehow, and quieter. I'd lived alone before getting married, but after 15 years of sharing space with someone, the solitude felt strange. I spent the afternoon going through our financial records, making copies of important documents, and changing passwords on accounts that Tessa had access to. It felt like preparing for a siege, which I supposed was exactly what I was doing. Sandra Walsh returned my call around 4 o'clock. Her voice was crisp and professional, but I could hear the warmth underneath when she realized who I was. "Neil Lang. I haven't heard that name in years. Ray Morrison said you might be calling." "I need a divorce attorney, Sandra, and according to Ray, you're the best in the business." "I'm certainly the most expensive," she said with a laugh, "but I'm also very good at what I do. Can you come in tomorrow morning? I have an opening at 9. "I'll be there." "Good. And Neil, bring copies of everything. Financial records, phone bills, credit card statements, anything that might be relevant. The more information I have, the better I can help you." After hanging up with Sandra, I called the private investigator Ray had recommended. His name was Marcus Webb, and his voice had the same world-weary quality as Ray's. "Ray Morrison referred you," he said after I'd explained the situation. "That's good enough for me. When do you want to start?" "As soon as possible. I'll need some basic information. Your wife's full name, workplace, vehicle description, known associates, and I'll need a retainer." We spent 20 minutes going over the details. Marcus's fee was substantial, but as he pointed out, good intelligence was always expensive. "One more thing," he said before we hung up. "Don't change your behavior patterns. Don't suddenly start asking your wife a lot of questions or acting suspicious. Let her think she's gotten away with it for now." "That's going to be difficult." "I know, but it's necessary. The moment she realizes you're building a case against her, she'll become more careful. Right now, she's probably feeling guilty, but also relieved that the secret is out. She might get sloppy." That evening, Tessa called around 8 o'clock. "I've been thinking about what you said last night," she began, her voice carefully controlled. "And I think you're right that we need some time apart to figure things out." "I've already figured things out, Tess. Don't be like that. I know you're hurt, and you have every right to be. But we've been together for 15 years, Neil. That has to count for something." "It did count for something, right up until you decided to throw it away for your ex-boyfriend." There was a long pause. "I want to try counseling. I think if we could just talk to someone neutral, work through what went wrong." "What went wrong is that you had an affair. There's no amount of counseling that's going to change that." "So that's it? 15 years of marriage, and you're just going to throw it all away over one mistake?" I almost laughed at her choice of words. "One mistake? Tess, affairs don't happen by accident. They require planning, deception, and a conscious choice to betray your spouse. That's not a mistake. That's a decision." "I never meant to hurt you. But you did hurt me, and more than that, you disrespected me, you lied to me, and you violated every promise you made when we got married." Another pause. "What do you want from me, Neil? What can I do to fix this?" "Nothing. There's nothing you can do. The trust is gone, Tess. And without trust, there's no marriage." "I don't accept that." "You don't have a choice. I'm filing for divorce." "Then I'll fight you." "That's your right. But it's not going to change the outcome." She hung up without saying goodbye. I sat in my living room for a long time after that, looking around at the life we'd built together, the furniture we'd picked out, the photos from vacations and holidays, the little decorative touches that had made this house a home. Tomorrow, I would start the process of dismantling it all, but tonight, I allowed myself to grieve for what we'd lost, and for the naive man I'd been who had believed that love and commitment were enough to keep a marriage together. The next morning, I met with Sandra Walsh in her downtown office. She was exactly as I remembered her from high school, petite, dark-haired, and radiating an intensity that made you pay attention when she spoke. The years had added some gray to her hair and lines around her eyes, but they'd also given her an air of authority that was immediately reassuring. "So," she said after we'd exchanged pleasantries and caught up briefly on the past 25 years, "tell me about your marriage." I spent the next hour laying out everything, how Tessa and I had met, our early years together, the gradual drift that had started a few years ago, and finally the discovery of her affair. Sandra took notes and asked pointed questions about our finances, our property, and whether we had children. "No kids," I said. "We tried for a few years early in the marriage, but it never happened. Eventually, we just stopped trying." That actually simplifies things from a legal standpoint, Sandra said. No custody issues to worry about. Now about your assets. You said you own your home jointly? Yes, and we have joint checking and savings accounts, retirement funds, investment accounts. Pretty much everything is shared. Any significant debts? Just the mortgage and her student loans from law school. Those are in her name only. Sandra made more notes. What about her income versus yours? She makes about twice what I do, maybe a little more in a good year. Interesting. So she's not going to be able to claim she needs spousal support. Is that good for me? Very good. In fact, given the income disparity and the adultery, you might have grounds to request spousal support from her. The irony wasn't lost on me. Tessa's success, which had always been a source of pride in our marriage, was now going to work against her in our divorce. We spent another hour going over strategy and logistics. Sandra explained the divorce process in Texas, discussed timelines and potential complications, and gave me a list of things I needed to do to protect myself financially. One more thing, she said as we wrapped up. You mentioned that your wife works for a large law firm. Is there any chance she might try to use her professional connections to influence the proceedings? I hadn't thought about that. You should. Lawyers talk to each other, especially in a city like Houston. If she has friends in family court or relationships with judges, it could complicate things. What can we do about that? Not much, except be prepared for it. Make sure all our paperwork is perfect, all our evidence is solid, and all our arguments are airtight. We can't control who she knows, but we can make sure she can't use those connections to overcome the facts. I left Sandra's office feeling more confident about my legal position, but also more aware of the challenges ahead. Tessa wasn't just going to roll over and accept a divorce on my terms. She was going to fight, and she had resources I didn't. My phone rang as I was walking to my car. The caller ID showed my friend Mike Patterson's name. Hey, Mike. Neil, buddy, I just heard about you and Tessa. I'm so sorry, man. I paused beside my car. How did you hear about it? Jennifer ran into Tessa at the grocery store last night. Tessa was pretty upset, said you two were having some problems. Mike Patterson and his wife Jennifer had been our closest couple friends for years. We'd met them at a neighborhood barbecue shortly after moving to Katy, and we'd been getting together regularly ever since, dinners, game nights, couples vacations. We're getting divorced, Mike. Jesus, what happened? Jennifer said Tessa seemed to think it was some kind of misunderstanding. I wasn't sure how much to tell Mike. He and Jennifer were good people, but they were also friends with both Tessa and me. Whatever I said would probably get back to Tessa eventually. She had an affair, I said finally, with her ex-boyfriend. Holy shit, are you sure? I'm sure. Man, I can't believe it. Tessa always seemed so, I don't know, devoted to you. Yeah, well, apparently I was wrong about that. Have you guys tried counseling? Maybe. Mike, she was sleeping with another man in a hotel room while telling me she was working late. There's no coming back from that. I get it, I do. I'm just saying, 15 years is a long time to throw away. I'm not throwing it away. She already did that. There was an uncomfortable pause. Look, Neil, I don't want to get in the middle of this, but Jennifer and I care about both of you. If there's anything we can do to help you work things out, there isn't. Okay. Well, if you need anything, you know we're here for you. And thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. But even as I said the words, I could hear the awkwardness in his voice. Mike and Jennifer were going to try to stay neutral, which meant they were going to stay friends with both Tessa and me. And in my experience, when couples divorced, mutual friends almost always ended up choosing sides, whether they meant to or not. I drove home and spent the rest of the day working in my garage, trying to lose myself in a project I'd been putting off for months, rebuilding the engine on my old Mustang. There was something therapeutic about working with my hands, about taking something broken apart and putting it back together correctly. Around 6 o'clock, my neighbor Tom Brennan knocked on the garage door. Hey, Neil, got a minute? Tom was a good neighbor, quiet, helpful, the kind of guy who would lend you his tools without asking questions. He was also married to Carol, who was friends with several of the women in our neighborhood, including Tessa. What's up, Tom? Look, I don't want to get involved in your personal business, but Carol heard some things and she asked me to talk to you. I set down my wrench and turned to face him. What kind of things? About you and Tessa splitting up. About you hiring someone to spy on her. I felt a flash of irritation. Did Carol hear these things from Tessa? I think so, yeah. Look, Neil, I don't know what's going on between you two, but having your wife followed by a private investigator seems kind of extreme. Does it? What would you do if you found out Carol was cheating on you? Tom's expression shifted. Is that what this is about? Tessa was cheating? Yes. Are you sure? I mean, sometimes things can look... I'm sure, Tom. She admitted it. Tom was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Shit. I'm sorry, man. I had no idea. Most people don't. Cheaters are usually pretty good at hiding it. So you really did hire a private investigator? Among other things, yes. Tom nodded slowly. I guess I can understand that. If it were Carol, I'd probably want to know everything too. Exactly. Well, for what it's worth, I think you're handling this better than I would. Carol was worried you might do something... I don't know, dramatic. Like what? Like show up at Tessa's office and cause a scene, or confront the other guy. I almost smiled. The thought has crossed my mind. But you're not going to do anything like that, right? I'm going to let my attorney handle things through proper legal channels. Tom looked relieved. Good. That's smart. Well, I should get back. Carol's making dinner. After Tom left, I realized that word of our separation was already spreading through our social circle. And based on Tom's comments, Tessa was working to control the narrative, painting herself as the victim of an unreasonably suspicious husband. That was going to be a problem. Our friends and neighbors only knew the version of events that Tessa was telling them. They didn't know about the hotel receipts, or the lies, or the confrontation in our kitchen. They just knew that we were getting divorced and that I'd hired a private investigator. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Patterson. Mike told me what's happening. I'm so sorry. If you need someone to talk to, I'm here. I stared at the message for a long moment before responding. Thanks, I appreciate it. But I knew I wouldn't be calling Jennifer to talk. She was Tessa's friend as much as mine, and anything I said to her would eventually make its way back to Tessa. That was the thing about divorce that nobody prepared you for. It wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the end of an entire social structure, a whole network of relationships that had been built around the couple you used to be. Over the next few days, the pattern became clear. Some friends reached out to offer support, but their offers felt tentative, conditional. Others stopped reaching out altogether. A few, like Mike and Jennifer, tried to maintain relationships with both Tessa and me, but even those interactions felt strained and artificial. The worst part was the neighborhood. I'd lived in the same house for 8 years, and suddenly I felt like an outsider. Conversation stopped when I walked by. People who used to wave from their driveways now avoided eye contact. Carol Brennan, who had been one of Tessa's closest friends in the neighborhood, actually crossed the street when she saw me getting my mail one afternoon. The message was clear. I was the bad guy in this story. The paranoid husband who had destroyed a perfectly good marriage with my suspicions and accusations. It was Marcus Webb, the private investigator, who finally provided some clarity. He called me on Friday afternoon with his first report. I've got good news and bad news, he said. The good news is that your wife is definitely still seeing David Carr. I've documented 3 meetings this week, twice at the hotel and once at his condo. And the bad news? The bad news is that she's being more careful now. No more joint credit card charges, no more obvious patterns. She's paying cash for everything and varying her routes and timing. But you still got evidence? Oh yeah. Photos, video, timestamps. Enough to prove the relationship is ongoing and intimate. What about phone records? Still working on that. But I did find something interesting about Mr. Carr. What's that? He's married, has been for 12 years. His wife's name is Patricia. They've got 2 kids. I felt a sick satisfaction at that news. Does his wife know about the affair? Not yet, but that's something you might want to discuss with your attorney. If this goes to trial, his wife could be a valuable witness. After hanging up with Marcus, I sat in my kitchen and thought about Patricia Carr. I didn't know her, had never met her, but I felt a kinship with her. She was living the same lie I'd been living, trusting a spouse who didn't deserve that trust. The question was, what was I going to do with that information? My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Sandra Walsh. Neil, I just got a call from Tessa's attorney. They want to set up a meeting to discuss settlement terms. Already? Apparently, your wife is eager to resolve this quickly and quietly. Her attorney mentioned something about wanting to avoid a public trial. What do you think? I think she's worried about what a trial might reveal. The question is, are you interested in settling, or do you want to fight this out in court? I thought about Patricia Carr, about our mutual friends who had already chosen sides, about the neighbors who crossed the street to avoid me. Let's hear what they have to offer, I said. But Sandra, I want them to know that if they try to lowball me or paint me as the villain in this story, I'm prepared to make things very public and very ugly. Understood. I'll set up the meeting. As I hung up the phone, I realized that the real battle was just beginning. Tessa might be ready to negotiate, but she wasn't ready to accept responsibility for what she'd done. and until she was, there could be no real resolution. The war for our marriage was over. Now the war for our divorce was about to begin. The settlement meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday at Sandra Walsh's office. I arrived 15 minutes early, partly out of habit and partly because I wanted time to compose myself before facing Tessa and her attorney. Sandra's conference room was designed to intimidate. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs, law books lining the walls. It felt like a place where important decisions were made and lives were changed forever. Tessa arrived precisely on time, accompanied by her attorney, a tall, silver-haired man named Richard Blackwood, whom I recognized from the society pages of the Houston Chronicle. He was exactly the kind of high-powered, expensive lawyer I'd expected Tessa to hire. Tessa looked different than she had the night of our kitchen confrontation. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, her suit expensive and professional. She'd armored herself in competence and success, but I could see the tension in her shoulders and the careful way she avoided making eye contact with me. "Ooh, gentlemen," Blackwood said after the introductions were made. "My client is interested in resolving this matter quickly and amicably. She's prepared to make a very generous offer." Sandra smiled politely. "We're always willing to listen to reasonable proposals." Blackwood slid a folder across the table. "Mrs. Lang is prepared to give up any claim to spousal support and to split all marital assets 50-50, including the house. She's also willing to take responsibility for her student loans, which would normally be considered marital debt." I looked at Sandra, who was reviewing the papers with a neutral expression. "What's the catch?" I asked. "No catch," Blackwood said. "My client simply wants to move forward with her life." "There's always a catch," Sandra said mildly. "What does Mrs. Lang want in return for this generosity?" Tessa spoke for the first time since entering the room. "I want Neil to agree not to make any public statements about our marriage or the reasons for our divorce. No social media posts, no talking to mutual friends, no spreading rumors or gossip." "Ah," Sandra said. "There's the catch." "It's not unreasonable," Blackwood said. "Divorce proceedings can be very damaging to both parties' reputations. My client's career could be seriously affected by unfounded allegations." "Unfounded?" I said, unable to keep the anger out of my voice. She admitted to having an affair. "A brief relationship that ended as soon as you discovered it," Blackwood replied smoothly. "Hardly the kind of scandalous behavior that warrants public humiliation." Sandra leaned back in her chair. "Let me understand this correctly. Mrs. Lang wants to buy her husband's silence about her adultery in exchange for giving up claims she probably couldn't win anyway in a contested divorce." "That's a very cynical way to put it," Blackwood said. "But accurate?" Blackwood didn't answer directly. "My client is trying to be fair." "Your client is trying to avoid the consequences of her actions," Sandra replied. "Mr. Lang, what do you think of this offer?" I looked at Tessa, who was finally meeting my eyes. She looked scared, which was something I'd never seen before. Tessa had always been fearless, in court, in business, in life, but now she was afraid of what I might say or do, afraid of how her affair might affect her career and reputation. "I think your client is worried about the wrong things," I said. "She should be worried about what her affair partner's wife is going to say when she finds out about the hotel rooms and the lies." Tessa's face went pale. "What do you mean?" "I mean David Carr is married, Tess. Has been for 12 years, 2 kids, and his wife has no idea that her husband has been screwing his ex-girlfriend in downtown hotels." Blackwood leaned forward. "Mr. Lang, I hope you're not threatening to contact uninvolved third parties." "I'm not threatening anything. I'm just pointing out that this situation is bigger than just Tessa and me. Other people have been hurt by your client's choices, and they deserve to know the truth." "You can't contact Patricia," Tessa said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why not? She's living the same lie I was living. Don't you think she has a right to know what her husband is really doing?" "That would be cruel." I stared at her. "Cruel? You've been sleeping with her husband for months, lying to both of us, and you think telling her the truth is cruel?" "It's not the same thing," Tessa whispered. "It's exactly the same thing. The only difference is she doesn't know yet." Sandra tried to call for a break, but I was done staying quiet. 15 years of marriage and months of gaslighting came pouring out. I told Tessa what cruel really was, lying to my face, making me feel insane for noticing her behavior, painting me as a paranoid stalker to our friends because I hired a PI, and then trying to buy my silence so her career wouldn't suffer. She cried, but those tears were for herself, not for me or Patricia. "I don't want your money," I said. "What I want, you can't give me back. My last 2 years, my trust, the marriage I thought I had. So I'll take the one thing that's left, the truth. And Patricia Carr is going to hear it." Blackwood threatened restraining orders and harassment charges. Sandra laughed in his face and laid it out. If they wanted war, we'd subpoena David's records, drag him into depositions, and let the whole mess come out in court anyway. The room went quiet. Tessa finally understood her attorney couldn't shield her from reality. On the way out, she grabbed my arm and apologized, saying she never meant for it to go this far. I told her she'd planned hotel rooms, alibis, and lies for months. She knew exactly how far she was going. Our marriage was already destroyed. I wasn't breaking anything, just exposing what they'd already smashed. In the elevator, Sandra said what I'd done was either very smart or very stupid, depending on whether I was ready for the war coming. I told her I was. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. He'd found interesting information about David Carr's business. I smiled as I started the engine. For the first time in months, I wasn't just reacting to their choices. The war was beginning, and now they would have to react to mine. 3 days after the failed settlement meeting, David's wife called me herself. Patricia's voice was calm but cut sharp. David had told her I was using her as a weapon in my divorce. I invited her to meet and bring her questions. The next evening, in a quiet coffee shop, I laid everything out. Hotel receipts, credit card statements, photos of David and Tessa entering and leaving the same room, over and over. 18 documented meetings in 6 months. Patricia stared at the stack, realizing her husband had lied about everything, not just the affair. Then I told her the rest, how David had used inside information Tessa pulled from her firm's real estate clients to make several $1 million in lucky deals. Her face hardened. He hadn't just betrayed her, he'd built his success on that betrayal. By the time we finished, she'd decided to file for divorce and make sure every dollar he made off the affair was dragged into their settlement. 2 days later, my lawyer called. Suddenly, Tessa wanted a new settlement. Each of us kept our own retirement. I got 70% of the house, no spousal support, no NDA. She knew what was coming. At the second meeting, Tessa looked hollow. I signed, then told her plainly I'd be reporting her to the bar for professional misconduct. She didn't argue. 6 months later, I was still in the house, my house now, tuning the rebuilt engine of my Mustang while news trickled in. Tessa disbarred, David buried in lawsuits, Patricia starting fresh in another state with a very good settlement. Old friends who'd taken Tessa's side came back around with apologies. New friends, like Sarah from the neighborhood barbecue, texted to confirm dinner plans. As my Mustang's engine purred to life, I realized the metaphor was almost too neat. Sometimes you have to strip everything down to the frame, throw out the broken parts, and rebuild from the ground up. That's what I'd done, with the car, with my life, and with myself.